All right, ladies and gentlemen, these days I always like to start by giving thanks to God, right? Because we slept this morning, we woke up, we never knew what happened during the night. God sent His angels to keep us safe, right? To protect us. Now we are here this morning. We've got every obligation to say thank you, God, right? So before we begin, we must say thank God for everything. And most importantly, we need to ask of His wisdom. It's God that gives wisdom, right? You can study, you can do whatever you like to do on your own. Without God, there's no way we can be able to achieve. So we pray that He provide us His wisdom and guide us throughout this lesson so that we can be able to do what we need to do to the glory and honor of His name. Right. Okay, guys. Today we're going to talk about the asset of a business. Asset of a business. If you have a business and you got no assets, that business is bound to have a big problem. Do you understand what I mean? Because you characterize a business as per whatever the business own, right? Because at the end of the day, it constitutes a part of the resources of the business, right? If you have a business or you running a business, perhaps, or you operating a business that is into delivery, transport and logistic, and you don't have a single truck of your own, you don't even have a back that you can call an asset for you to do your business, how will you look at that business? That reminds me, you're going to laugh now. There was a time there was a tender here at West Coast College. You see the transport that you are using, these buses, right? 2010, that thing started 2010, long time ago when I came here. I remember what the campus manager said then. It was a lot of money, right? So it has been one person, one service provider. So at a point, they decided that they don't want the business to be only for one person. Then they advertised. They put up a tender. Then they did the tendering system. Then businesses were shortlisted. Right. Now, this guy, I don't know what happened. This guy presented a very nice bid, right? You know, then he won the tender. When we came back, we were looking for transport to bring the learners. That guy had no single bus. Then he started with using this taxi, right? This small buses. And you cannot commute the student because we got a lot of students with these mini buses, these taxis. Then that guy, for the first 1 week, that guy was nowhere to be seen. Our students, they were waiting. Because our students, they were used to all these big luxury buses coming to pick them. No bus, nothing. Then it was getting almost 1 month. Nothing was up. Then they later discovered that guy got no single asset. So eventually, what happened? The contract was revoked. They had to give it to another bidder. You see, asset is very important, right? It's the same thing. When you got a business, invest in acquiring assets. It's gonna help you. So today we are going to talk about the component, what constitutes asset of a business. Right. We got what we call fixed asset and current assets. Right. I don't want to bug you with this. There's what we even call intangible asset. Right. Intangible asset. Let me better make it more. Fixed asset are assets that are not mobile, right? Assets that are not mobile. For example, assets that are not easily transferable. Those are what we call fixed assets, right? We got long term and short term, right? We got uh okay, we got current asset, we can easily be transferable, right? Then we got what we call under current, we got cash. Cash is an asset. We call it a liquid asset, right? Then you have the debtors. Why do we consider the debtors as an asset? Because one day the debtors they're gonna pay you your debt, right? When they pay you your money, then you're gonna turn to cash, perhaps. Then you got stock, which are the goods that you are selling, right? Let's see how you got it in your. Let me see where it is in your book here. Cash flow. Which page have you seen where it is? Okay, 75, right? Okay. We said um, current asset. Cash, I've explained that. Debtors, right? Because once the debtors, you know what debtors means? When you are selling your product on credit, right? The ones you are selling to, they becomes your debtor. They are owing you, right? Obviously, based on the terms of the your deal, they are going to pay you. So once they pay you, then if it's cash, pay you in cash, then you're gonna have money. The stock is the same thing, asset. We call them current asset. Why do we call them current asset? Because it can change from one form to the other. Right. So we said fixed asset, we could be computers, cell phone, fax machine, and office furniture. Right. Because these are not something in terms of liquidity. There is a language, a concept that I would like to explain to you here. Liquidity is the rate at which you can change one asset to the other. So fixed assets have a low level of liquidity, liquidity, right? Compared to cash. Cash you can easily convert it to anything. Debtors you can easily convert it. Stock you can easily convert it. But fixed asset cannot be. It has a low level of liquidity. So, for example, we are talking about computers, right? For example, let's say my business, I'm a facilitator, right? That is the nature of my business, right? If we want to consider the fixed asset that I'm using for my business, obviously I've got my laptop, right? It's a fixed asset to me. It's an asset to me that I'm using for my business. If I don't have a laptop to do presentation, how will I do it? It will be difficult for me. Then the projector. So all these things that I'm doing, using, you can call them resources as well, in other form, constitute what we call the asset of the business. Does it make sense? So you fixed asset, right? Office furniture, tools, machineries, and equipment, the value of land, right, owned by the business. All these are fixed assets. For example, if you got a business, you need a loan from the bank. Then the bank wants to know the value of your fixed asset. You understand what I mean? Most especially landed property. The bank wants to see, right? They value your landed property. We could serve as a form of collateral security or a guarantee. To guarantee the bank, you pledge it. It gives the bank that guarantee that when you fail or whenever you fail to pay back whatever you borrow, then they can use that one, sell it, and pay back whatever you've owed. Do you understand what I mean? That is the more reason as well. You need to have invest in fixed assets. Does it make sense to you? You know, some people are poor because they got no investment. They don't invest in their assets. Do you understand? Invest in fixed assets, most especially fixed assets. I'm not talking about car. I'm not saying cars is not an asset to the business, but when you got cars and you want to take loan from the bank doesn't normally look at cars because cars can get damaged, anything can happen to a car. But when you have a landed property, you got a piece of land, right, at the heart of Cape Town, at the strategic position in Cape Town. It's a hot cake. You know what I mean by a hot cake? Everybody wants to take a bite of a hot cake. Have you ever eaten a hot cake before? It's very rare to see a hot cake because it's in demand. When I mean a hot cake, I mean something that is in demand, right? It's a kind of an idiomatic expression, use of language. We call it nomenclature. Don't be confused. I don't want to confuse you. I see some people are already sleeping, right? But it's a full class today. I'm loving it, right? So those are the fixed assets. So we say all these items were bought for a specific amount, but will lose value over a certain period of time. By a hoot. I love that. Now we are talking about depreciation. Depreciation. Guys, focus very well on what we are trying to do here now, on what I'm explaining. Very important. Because you cannot be a student of business, right? You study entrepreneurship or new venture creation, this language, this concept that you don't know. When you buy asset to run your business, over time it depreciates. What do we mean by depreciation? Reduction in the value of your assets. Does it make sense to you? You've got a logistic business. Oh, transport and logistic, right? You bought your truck or your delivery van, right? After few years, the value will start depreciating through wearing out, wears and tears. Let me put it that way. The value of your delivery van you bought today, after 6 months, it's not going to be the same value again. Do you get the point of what I'm saying? Right? So your fixed asset depreciates. Look at my computer. When I was given this computer during COVID. The way the computer is now, it has depreciated. Right? The value have depreciated. It used to perform very well before, but nowadays it's not the same. Right? So when you are having a business, you're operating a business, you invested in fixed assets, you need to take into consideration the concept of depreciation, that the value of your asset is depreciating. A wise entrepreneur set aside money, right, for to account for depreciation. For example, after a certain period of time, you need to dispose of that asset. With the money you save, you combine it, then you buy a new one. Otherwise, if you don't make provision for your asset that is being depreciated, one day that as particular asset will not be able to perform the function that it used to do before. Then it might get broken down. So how are you going to run your business? Right? This is one of the reasons where you see some business they are struggling, they don't make it because when the money is coming, they've forgotten that that asset the value is depreciating. it will come to a situation one day that that asset will not be able to work for them again. Then, if you don't keep aside money to for the replacement of that particular asset, you're gonna have a big problem. So these are the kind of dynamics that you need to know when you are running a business. Right. For example, there could be introduction of a new system, a new way of doing things. Like these days, you see how technology is. The rate at which technology changes is very alarming. You bought something today, after 3 years, it becomes obsolete. If you don't save money for you to buy the state of the art to replace the old one, where will you be? You're going to have a problem, right? Your competitors that got the means of replacing their obsolete equipment resources to buy state of the art, they are going to perform, they're going to outclass you and subject you to relegation. Then you're going to kick you out of the business. Do you get the sense of what I'm trying to say? So these are what we call business management. You must make sure that all these things you take them into consideration. Depreciation is very important that you need to know. Right? Are you understanding what I'm saying? So depreciation, you are using them in your business. Of course, you operate your business. So the older they get, the less value they become. Right. So at the end of the day, for example, you got a truck, right? After 5 years, it has depreciated, right? And you want to dispose it of. The amount at which that the value of that truck after 5 years is what we call residual value. I think it's not here. That one could be beyond your syllabus here, right? The residual, we call it residual value. When you have depreciated, right, your equipment or whatever item that needs to be depreciated, the value of it at the end of the day is what we call residual value. Residual, right? Okay. It's not in your textbook, right? I'm just giving you that knowledge for your knowledge sake. Then, okay, the only fixed asset, younger, good news, that does not lose their value over time. What is that? Land. You see? That is why I say landed property is something that is very, very crucial, fundamental as far as the ownership of asset is concerned. Land. Land doesn't depreciate. That is why you see people kill themselves, right? Striving to make sure they control the land. And you know the history of this country, right? Because land issue is very sensitive. Land doesn't depreciate. If you want to invest, create a generational wealth, invest in buy land. Try to invest in landed property. You see? So from what you learning today now tells you that landed property is very important. Not cars. Don't invest in cars. Right? Invest in landed property. It doesn't depreciate. Rather, it appreciates. You know the difference between depreciation and appreciation? Who doesn't know? Depreciation and appreciation. Depreciation is losing value, right? Appreciation is gaining value. You know? Okay. Now, liabilities. Okay, current asset, we already explained. Liabilities. What do we mean by liabilities? Right? Liability are exactly what the name is. Right. Liability in short are debt. Right? Debt. When you owe. Debt. You know what is debt? Not debt. Debt. Let me take a sip of my warm water. Debt. Liability. Liability is not a good, it's not good to be. much of liability, to have too much of liabilities. Let me put it that way. As a business person, you got to owe. You must owe, right? But to a limited extent. It's very difficult for you to see a business that is operating 100% owner's equity. You know what I mean by owner's equity? Your own investment. It's very difficult. It's also a good business, a big business to be 100% owner's own, right? It's difficult. You need to owe, right? But you must make sure that the portion of your debt doesn't crowd your own investment. What I mean is, for example, if you are running a business, if it is, for example, 80% owner's equity and 20% of debt is good. It's not bad because the debt is not overcrowding your own investment, your equity, owner's equity. The one you invested, we call it equity, right? Owner's equity. But in a situation where you are running a business, 80% is debt, only 20% belongs to you. That business have got a chronic disease. It's bought one, you're gonna die very soon because we call it you are debt laden. You see, it's not gonna survive. Sooner or later, you're gonna die because the debt, its percentage of debt is too much. And that type of business, when you look at the profitability ratio, when you look at the profit margin, you look at how the viability of it, part of the money will be used to service the debt because you loan, interest has to be paid to your borrowed capital. And that is where your money is going to be going. You see? The chronic disease going to be destroying the system. One day you see the business will collapse. Right? So debt is not a good news. It's a heavy load, right? Look at yourself as an individual, younger, on a relative basis. In reality, when you owe somebody money, when you see that person on the road, how do you feel? Debt is very heavy. It's like 50 kilogram of cement put on somebody's head if you are old. You know, to make the class a little bit lively, let me give you this story. I used to have a friend those days. I think I've told you the story. This friend of mine doesn't like borrowing people money, right? Even myself, he was my best friend. Whenever I need money, I will ask this guy. He doesn't give. For example, if I say I need 100 rand, he's gonna give me 10 rand. He said, I'm giving you this one for free. Don't pay me back. Then I started watching this guy. Not that this guy don't have money, he got bucks, right? But he doesn't borrow me money. Whenever I want to travel home, because you know those days when we were studying, it's not like these days now you got digital payment, you know, ATM everywhere. I used to travel kilometers home to go and take money. Then I would borrow somebody else money to go home. When I come back, I pay. This guy was not borrowing me money. I was my good friend. One day I called him. I said, my friend, why are you behaving like this? Huh? He, he told me, he said, come. He used to call me Richie. No, he used to call me Doggy. He said, Doggy, Doggy. He said, come here. I want to tell you something. He was a little bit grown up than me, right? He got an experience in life. He was a little bit grown up. He said, come, let me tell you something. You know why I don't borrow you money? He said, look here. You are my best friend, right? I comes to you, even to your hostel, student, where we got student accommodation, to sleep there whenever I've got a problem. I don't want to go to town. And sometimes if I don't attend lectures, you are the one that used to give me notes. You see, he said, you are very, very important to me. He said, if I start giving you money, borrow you money, and if you don't have the money to pay me back, he said, gonna lose out both ways. One, his money will not be paid, and the friendship is gonna destroy. He said, that is why I don't borrow you. Because if I give you money and it come to a point that you haven't got the money to pay me, when you see me, you're gonna be running away. And I don't want you to be running away from me. That is why I don't give to you. Later I realized, what the guy was saying, and it's true. Because when you are owing money, most especially if you don't know how to manage debt, you need to know how to manage debt. How do you manage debt? One of the things is that when you are owing somebody, don't run away. When you've got a business, your business is owing money, and it come to a point whereby you need to pay. Go there, your creditor. Go and talk to your creditor. Be bold. Talk to your creditor. Say, I've got a problem now. I was expecting money. Unfortunately, the money is not coming forth. Please give me enough time. You reschedule, right? They're not gonna blacklist you, right? You know, a lot of people in this country are blacklisted. And once you are blacklisted, financially, it's like you are financially doomed because you cannot get any credit. You want to buy a simple stuff, maybe even a cell phone or credit. Then they ask you of your ID. They put it in the system. They say, we're going to call you back. They're not going to call you back. You see? So I've got a friend those days. This is another real story, right? This guy could not buy a new car. You know what happened? Because during the time, there was a time he was working at Pick and Pay. Those days, long, long time ago, he bought some food item on credit. He couldn't pay, and he became blacklisted. A very good friend of mine. He said, he called me and said, these were small things I bought those days in Pick and Pay. It's now becoming a problem. I said, yes, because they put you couldn't pay. Or maybe he was in a position to pay, but he felt that nobody's gonna drag him to pay. Then he neglected it. At the end of the day, that thing shook his neck like this. You know? So those are the things that when you are running a business, I'm not saying you mustn't owe, but try to balance it. So debt in the business is what we call liability. Not only in business, right? I sometimes I use liability to express, I use it in a literary expression. When you are a burden to somebody, you are a liability to that person. Is it not correct? When you are a burden, burden, right? You are a load to somebody. You are a liability. You can add it to your vocab, not only in entrepreneurship, but in ordinary expression. If somebody is relying too much on you, depending on you, that person is a liability to you. Right? Okay, those are the things we are talking about. We said liability is exactly what the name says, right? It is all those items that the business is liable, what you are liable for, right? Then it is money that is owned by your business to other people, business and the government. There are two types of liability: current liability and long-term liability. Current liability, we're talking about short-term loans, right? Overdraft. You know, some people, because they qualify for overdraft, they like to always go for an overdraft, right? You know what is an overdraft? You know what is an overdraft? What is an overdraft? When you go to the bank, there are certain people they qualify for a kind of a short-term loan, an overdraft. You got a current account, right? Maybe perhaps you got 20,000 and you need maybe extra 5,000, 25,000. Then if you qualify for an overdraft, you can apply. They will allow you to take it. to withdraw the 25,000. Then 5,000 gonna be a kind of overdraft that you need to pay off, right? You see, so that debt is something that the interest rate is very high. So if you don't manage your debt very well, you say I've got an overdraft facility. Then you start using your overdraft facility. At the end of the day, you find yourself in a very big mess. Some people use an overdraft facility to add up to whatever they've got to buy a car. That is a very big mistake. You know, in financial management, let me tell you something. There's what we call matching maturity. Matching maturity in financial management. You cannot use an overdraft to buy something that you're going to pay off in 5 years. You see, because the interest rate is very high. You know, you cannot, you instead you apply for a car loan. Have you ever seen people using an overdraft to buy an equipment? No, you can't use that because for you to the repayment period for that equipment is gonna take it's over years, from 5, 10 years, right? If you take an overdraft to buy it, right? Having an overdraft for a period of 5 years is a lot of interest that you are going to pay. It's a lot. You see, that is why when people want to take a home loan, you see the interest for a home loan is a little bit lower than an overdraft. If I'm not mistaken, an overdraft now is about 21% or 22%. It's a lot. That means every 1,000 now you have to pay 220 rand. It's a lot of money. Imagine you have to pay off that one for 5 years. You see, so that is why people that knows about financial management that pass through these lessons, this program that you are doing, they know how to manage money. Because if taxi man in the garage doesn't know that there is a matching maturity, they can even tell you you qualify for overdraft, you can take the overdraft to buy the car. No, you see, it's a big problem. You see, so when you take a long-term loan interest is lower than the short-term loan. So those are the things that we need to consider. So when we say long-term liabilities, right, and then current liability, right? Current liability, short-term. Okay, let's talk about this. Shareholders. Why do you consider shareholders as a liability? They invested in your business by buying shares, right? Obviously, they are expecting returns, right? A shareholder cannot invest in your business and at the end of the day folding arms as if it's something gratuitous. Gratuitous means free. It's not free, right? They are in business as well. You are owing them. You see, right? The money, in the first place, they put money in your business. That money doesn't belong to you. You know what we mean by shareholders? Okay. There are certain businesses, we call them public limited liability companies, that when they need money to expand their business or whatever, they issued what we call shares, right? So people, organizations, they can buy shares from that company. Then once you got a share, you invested money on it into the business, then they issue you share certificate. You become a shareholder. So at the end of the year, when the business have declared what we call, they first of all declare their profit, right? Make their profit known, publish their profit. That's what we call dividend. Dividend. So now they have to decide at the end of the year how much dividend, right, they're gonna pay out to the shareholders. It's from there that they have to decide how much you're gonna receive. So what I'm trying to say is you as a shareholder to your business, you are owing that shareholder. One day the shareholder can decide to take the money back. So you're gonna remain with nothing. So it's a debt. You are liable. Remember that language. Liabilities means you liable, right? To the shareholders. It's a debt. We call that a long-term debt. You know why we call them a long-term debt? Because it's not something that the shareholder can just wake up one day all of a sudden and say, I need my money. Right? So it's something that is programmed, scheduled. It's not of a short-term space or a short-term period. Then long-term loan, long-term loan, right? Yeah, you go to the bank, you apply for a long-term loan. Can even take 5 years, 10 years, or thereabout, right? It's a liability. It's a loan that needs to be paid. It's money that needs to be paid. You are liable. Then current liability. This one is quick for a quick period, for a short time space, right? Overdraft, like I explained to you, I've already explained an overdraft to you. Normally, overdraft lifespan should be 1 year, right? 12 months. You should be able to pay off your overdraft within 12 months. Don't prolong it. Don't elongate it more than necessary. Otherwise, you're going to pay too much interest. Then creditors. Who are creditors? The ones that have sold your suppliers, right? That have given you supplies or whatever on credit. They are your creditors. You need to pay them back, right? So you are liable. The tax. Tax is a liability, right? Most of you, you might not consider tax as a liability because you don't pay tax. And people, you got a lot of small businesses that are tax dodgers. They dodge tax. And most of the businesses are not registered. I'm not talking about those businesses. Those are informal businesses. A business that is legal, legit, right? That is institutionalized, formalized, need to pay tax. Right. By virtue of the fact that you need to pay tax, you are liable to the government. If you don't pay tax, you can be in prison. Do you know about it? You can be sent to jail if you fail to pay tax, if you run away from paying tax. There was a medical doctor in one of these provinces, I think it's Kimberley. This guy was operating a surgery, was not paying tax. Now, when the wrath of the government caught hold of him, he was sentenced to jail. So you don't play with the government. You must pay your tax, right? So, yeah, because tax is an obligation that you must, right? In the first case, if you are a tax dodger, you are someone that is sabotaging the economy, right? You become a saboteur. You must make sure that you pay your tax, pay your due. What is you need to pay to the government, right? Okay, guys. Let's conclude nicely, right? Don't run away. Don't run away. Guys, we're going to stop here. You know what is asset, current asset, and fixed asset. You know what is liability, long term. Because in the exam, they might ask you to give examples, right? Okay. So you know what is current and long term. Then this aspect is very interesting. I'm telling you, what we are doing now is what I love most, right? As far as this subject is concerned, we're gonna do break even, then we're gonna do cash flow, right? Before we finish, but I'll try to see how we're gonna be able to round up this thing. I want to finish the syllabus, right? Before the exam, we still have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday by the grace of God, right? Okay.